Well, hello, and welcome to Working Lunch, the SLO Chamber's weekly series where we connect our community with some of the exciting people and things happening in our region. I'm Jim D'Antona, President and CEO of the SLO Chamber, and today we're sitting down with Heidi McPherson, CEO of the Community Foundation, San Luis Obispo County. The Community Foundation is a grant-making and education foundation supporting charitable work across our county with grants and scholarships totaling more than $37 million. Since 2014, Heidi has led the organization's work to fulfill their vision of improving the lives for all who live and care about SLO County's diverse communities. Under her stewardship, the foundation's grants program has positively impacted lives of thousands, and the charitable assets have grown more than 20%. Heidi has been recognized as an outstanding community leader with accolades from the American Association of University Women, March of Dimes Women of Achievement, the state of Pennsylvania Senate, and as a top 50 women in business on the Central Coast by the Pacific Coast Business Times for 4 years. Her diverse experience includes senior management and consulting roles for community foundations, private family foundations, as well as universities, and health, social justice, and arts organizations. Today, I'm excited to talk with Heidi about what led to a career in philanthropy, how local nonprofits are adapting in the pandemic, and some of the amazing work being done at the Community Foundation. Heidi, thank you so much for being here.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Delighted to join you.
Well, as we sit down to lunch here, first and foremost, love to know where you're zooming in from today.
Well, I am actually, like so many of us, in my home office. So I have the background building, a picture of our building, so you don't have to look at my messy office.
It's a beautiful background. Love that. And a virtual background looks great. Well done. So before we kind of dive into all the amazing things that are going on at the Community Foundation, I'd love to know what first drew you to a career in philanthropy. Was there an event, an experience, something that shaped your philanthropic values?
It's such an interesting question because back in the day, nobody really thought they were actually going to get into the business of philanthropy. And I was actually on my way to law school and as an undergraduate. I was elected to the board of trustees of my college and got involved in the anti-apartheid movement, trying to divest the university from investments in South Africa. And I found this incredible passion for the work. And so I think that just kind of got me started. I never went to law school. I got into philanthropy for social change, and the rest is history.
I'm going to say that I think for a lot of our guests that have been here, we're going to have to do a segment on all of us who thought we were going to go into the legal profession and then went somewhere else. But it seems like, this career has enabled you to do some pretty exceptional things. Is there an accomplishment or an endeavor that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, it really is. It's an honor to work in this space. It really is, and it comes with a lot of responsibility because there's a lot of community caring involved. And I think, to be honest, probably the thing that I'm most excited about in my career is what we've done most recently with the Disaster Support Fund at the foundation during COVID. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but to really see a community come together to support one another, and the fact that the Community Foundation is here so that we can help people who want to help other people. It really is just an extraordinary demonstration about how philanthropy can impact social change.
It's been incredible work, and you've done amazing stuff. You're right. We'll dive into a little bit more of that. But looking kind of outside of your career, as folks may want to get to know Heidi, what are some of your passions and hobbies? How would someone who knows you only outside of work maybe describe you?
Yeah, I love that question because I tend to come across pretty serious in my professional endeavor. And people who know me outside of work are just so surprised when they meet me in a professional environment because they say, "You're so serious." Because outside of work, I think, my friends would say that I'm more fun and interested in lots of things. In fact, right now we have a new puppy at our house that we're training to be a therapy dog, and so I'm a little tired because of that. But there's so many interests that I have outside of of the work. But to be honest, I bring my personal self and my professional self to the work because I so believe in it. And it's so fulfilling. And I think that's really important to me, both on the personal and professional side.
Yeah, I was going to wonder if that was part of what makes, doing this work so great, is that some of your personal and professional kind of overlap in that area.
Yeah, you really have to bring your own personal values to this work, because there's the times that it really is very challenging and demanding, and you really need to draw on that deep well that you have, that you really believe in this work. And I think that it really is kind of a thrill, actually, professionally, to be able to marry your personal values with your professional endeavor. And I really feel, very fortunate to be able to realize both sides of myself.
Well, and it comes through certainly in that you can see, and that there are days where that are really hard, but that your passion comes through. And so I think it's great that you found a place where you can marry those things. It truly is.
Yeah, it really is interesting because it's such a privilege. I really wish everybody could have that, you'd be able to bring their heart to their work. I think it kind of makes life so much more fulfilling that way.
It is great. And again, it fits so perfectly for the work you're doing. But so you obviously did not grow up in SLO, but what initially drew you to SLO then? Were you someone who had long visited the area, or was this role really kind of your first connection?
Well, it's interesting. So the short version is, when we lived in Santa Monica, my husband had Cal Poly as a client. And so he used to come up here once or twice a year. And I was working at UCLA at the time. And he was saying, oh, you just got to come up to this wonderful little town, San Luis Obispo. And we'd gotten married in Santa Barbara. And I thought that it stopped Santa Barbara to Monterey. Didn't know that there was a Central Coast in between. And so I came up with him once. This is years ago, before the kids were born. And we just fell in love with it. But then the kids were born and we moved back east. And, that's where we're both from. And we raised our kids and the whole thing. But we always kind of kept in the back of our mind, we want to go back to California. And so when I was first approached by Dave Edwards, who was the very first executive for the Community Foundation, who, when he left the Community Foundation, was working at a search firm. And so he did the search for my position. And so when he called me to talk about this, and I thought, and we were in San Francisco at the time, and I thought, well, this is kind of odd. And so I called my husband at work, and I said, I just got this odd phone call about a position in San Luis Obispo. And Dick said, well, I don't care what the job is, just say yes. So it was a little bit more complicated than that, but basically we just always felt that this was a very, very special place. And we've been here for 7 years and it feels like home.
Yeah, well, I can share some of those same sentiments from my spouse. When this job offer was definitely I don't know what it is, just go do it, because it's a beautiful community and it's been great. And I think what was interesting is, when we were talking earlier this week, you mentioned that, you came from a small community where you knew everyone and everyone knew you back on the East Coast. And was that something you were looking to replicate in this role, or was that something completely not in the plan?
It's so interesting. And I think, many of us have an experience of working professionally as an adult in an environment and a community where you grew up. And that was wonderful, and we loved it. And there are 3 generations of us, et cetera. But I think that there's a little bit of church and state, right? You want, really want to be able to say, this is my professional life, this is my personal life. There's something nice about going to the grocery store and not having everybody talk to you about the Community Foundation business, although I'm happy to always talk about the Community Foundation business. So, but I think I value my personal space now more than since I have that opportunity to kind of segment my life, a little bit more. So, I don't need to have everybody know me by any means. I want them to know the Community Foundation, but I am not the Community Foundation. The Community Foundation is its own entity, and so I think that separation between those two, the personal and the professional, is important for me. For me now, especially in a small community. A lot of people don't like to be kind of bothered about work things when they're, out, tasting wine or doing something silly. That's going to happen. It's a small community, but it's kind of a nice change.
Well, and you were talking a little bit about before, so you were in LA, Santa Monica, obviously not really a small community, and
No.
you can be very anonymous down there. I'm familiar with that. And in San Francisco, you were in the same space. So it seems like you've kind of been back and forth. And have you found that is really in what you were just talking about, that separation of church and state, is finding something in the middle there, the balance?
That's what I love about San Luis Obispo County, right? Is that it's small enough to really be a small community, but it's diverse enough that all communities are different. When we first were looking to move here, and people were saying, "Oh, well, you want to live here or you want to live here," and there's all these microclimates. And we're from Philadelphia. There's like two microclimates, right? There's summer and there's winter, and you get 2 days of spring. And we thought, what's a microclimate? Like, how different can it be? Oh, they were so right. They were so right. Every community is different. Every environment is different. It's one of the things I love about San Luis Obispo County, is that it really is so different, from an environmental standpoint and personality standpoint. Morro is very different than Paso, and everything in between is just very rich.
Well, and thinking about a little bit of what you just said in term, not just now, but a few minutes ago, you were talking about, that experience of when you're new to an area, but not wanting to develop an organization that kind of rests on the personality of the CEO. Was that something you encountered when you came here? And, are there pros and cons to having that being the face or the complete organization around your personality?
Yeah, I think that the organization can't help but demonstrate your own personality and your own values, and I think that there's a nice marriage between my professional values and the community foundation's values. Integrity and diversity are very, very important to me and to the foundation, and so that marriage is really important. And the community foundation is a permanent entity, and was here long before me and will be here long after me. And so I often tell our team at the foundation, it's our turn to watch it. It's our turn to steward this incredibly important organization that benefits the entire community. And so let's take good care of our house, of our foundation, while we can, while it's our turn to pay attention and to be stewards of this wonderful, wonderful institution.
Well, and you started talking about it, but it occurs to me, if someone has never encountered a community foundation before, maybe how would you describe the institution in general?
Yeah, community foundations are a unique beast, and they are really kind of like a public trust that, as you said in your introduction, we're grant makers, we're educators, we work with people who are interested in philanthropy, and to make a difference in their community, estate giving, professional advisors, donor advised funds, those kinds of things. But community foundations themselves have been around for a long time, and the first one is over 100 years old in Ohio, and we're coming up on 25 years, believe it or not, which is just amazing. And there are over 1,000 community foundations just in the United States, and so there's a really large and very rich network of professionals who work in this space. Each community foundation is kind of organic to its own community, so there are a lot of things that are very similar, but the uniqueness of the community and the community foundation representing that community, we look very different than the Orange County Community Foundation, for example. But I think that that's one of the joys of a community foundation, is it came from the community itself, and so it represents what the personality is, from our standpoint too. So we manage investments, we work with folks to be able to match their interests with the community needs, and then we work with all of our nonprofit partners as well across the county.
Well, and you highlighted something there where, again, we have a saying in the chamber industry: if you've met one chamber, you've met one chamber. They're all a little different. They all do different things. Could you talk a little bit about what's the personality or the culture of the community foundation in SLO, and kind of where that ethos comes from or feels like?
Yeah, and I think it really comes from the founders of the community foundation. Why do we have a community foundation that serves our county? And I think that the sense that you and I both had, since we come from other places, that we didn't know that much about the Central Coast until you really get to learn about it, and then you love it. And I think that the fact that there were people, 25 years ago, who said we need to keep philanthropy here, and have a resource, so the people who are interested in making a difference can have some place to talk to. We work with all of the nonprofits, all of the needs, all of the data. And I think so we are the trusted advisor for a lot of folks in what are the needs, what are the trends that we're seeing, because we're on the ground working with the nonprofits, every day pretty much, in terms of what their needs are. And with COVID, it's just been extraordinary. And I'm incredibly proud of the nonprofit community and how they've been able to pivot and respond. But part of that is because this is such a generous community, that those values of caring about one another that this community is known for, it just came through in the disaster and COVID. I think we just really saw the bright side of this community. There's so many bright sides from COVID. It's COVID so dark that I like to think about the bright side, and what are the things that we've learned? What are some of the the wonderful trends that we're going to see going forward? But I think those values started with the founders who decided that we really wanted to have a resource here locally to connect people who care with the needs, and that catalyst and connector role is something that we take very, very seriously.
Well, and one of the funny things for me when I got here was this discussion that the myth or the big talk about our community has so many nonprofits, just inordinate amount. You deal with all of them. Do you have data on how we actually stack up compared to maybe other communities in the region, in the state, in the country?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question. And I have to tell you, almost every community I've been in feels like they have the most nonprofits that anybody's ever seen. And so when I got here, I thought, well, if we're going to be a grant maker, a successful grant maker, I really need to have a better sense of who are the agencies that are out there. And so we actually did a study and used data that's collected by the IRS on tax returns, et cetera, to really look at how many nonprofits do we actually have? How large are they? And it's fascinating because we really don't have as many active nonprofits. So the ones that people can register as a nonprofit, but then they're not actually operating. So we have less nonprofits than people think. But what we do have is we have a lot of small nonprofits. And so about 80% of our nonprofits have budgets under $500,000. So that really helped us adjust our grant program so that we could really focus on how do we help those small organizations. So a little small organization whose executive is probably a volunteer, or it's only one person, and they're at 10 o'clock at night trying to jam out a grant application, and put that next to one of the large organizations that gets federal and state and county money. Those applications, you can't really compare apples to apples that way, because they're really apples to oranges. And so we really started to determine that our grant program needed to separate a little bit. And so we started a small grants program called Build. And that's only for organizations that have operating budgets of less than $500,000. And it really is to help build capacity. And so that was really important for us. So we heard that myth, and we really wanted some data around it, and we got the data, and as a result, our grants program is revised.
It's so great to hear. Again, we have so many great people doing great work. It doesn't feel like we have too many, and it's good to hear that it actually probably similar to every other community. And again, we do have such charitable folks here, but you've obviously spent a lot of time looking at this information. And how would you say nonprofits are doing? You know, obviously, this has been a rough year. Is there something maybe the broader community should know about this past year for our nonprofits?
Well, I spoke a little bit earlier about the bright spots. And one of the things that we've really seen is twofold. One is, yes, the nonprofits are struggling. They're very much struggling. And this has hit them very hard because it's hit their clients and their patients and the people that they serve very hard. And so they've really had to scramble to be able to meet the needs of their constituencies. At the same time, it's been really hard to raise money. So I think that the nonprofits, I give them an enormous amount of credit for hanging in there and really facing the adversity as best they possibly can. And they've been just remarkable. One of the really bright spots, I think, is that that COVID has really demonstrated to us all, and specifically to the nonprofits, that they're stronger together. And so we're seeing some wonderful collaboration and cooperation, mergers, et cetera, of nonprofits who do similar work and realize that they are stronger together. And so I'm really excited about that level of collaboration. I don't know whether we're going to see a lot more in terms of the mergers, but those conversations are happening, and I think it's all for the good. It really is, because it is had to be so fragmented is challenging, and so to be able to come together, and you are stronger, you know, when you work together. You know, one shop might have a really good social service team, the other shop might have a really good finance team. You bring them both together, and the clients are served, the patients are served, everybody is served a little bit, you know, a little bit better. So I'm excited about that. I think it's, you know, it's one of the bright spots that coming out of COVID, and I think we're going to see some really strong development in the next couple of years because of that.
I would say I was following, right, that I'm so thankful, you know, when the chamber and community foundation started collaborating. You know, we were lucky enough to work with you and the city of SLO earlier this year to provide nearly $1 million in direct funding to more than 250 small for-profit businesses, right, disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. It seems like something that, you know, you and the board really took a pivot and adjustment to say, we can help here, though it's not our focus, right? We should do some things because it helps the overall. Can you talk maybe a little bit about what the thinking was on why, like how you jumped in on that?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, just like the nonprofits are pivoting, we all are pivoting, right? We all are trying to see, okay, what are stronger relationships that we can develop. You know, the chamber works with all the for-profit small businesses that were impacted. That's not our sweet spot, it's your sweet spot. But we have people who are interested in making charitable contributions to be able to support those nonprofits. So I think those kinds of marriages, you know, kind of the three legs of the stool, the city, the chamber, and the community foundation, you know, really represents, you know, true civic engagement, right? Because we've got public-private partnerships that I think we can really build upon in the future. Our disaster support fund and our grant program, we're just looking at some numbers recently. I mean, we have over $6 million in grants that we awarded last year, which is so much more. We usually do somewhere between 2 and 3. And so the amount of activity and support that came in and went out is just incredible. And I think that one of the things that was most interesting to me from our disaster support fund is over half of the people who made contributions, large and small, to our disaster support fund to support COVID, over half of them we didn't know, and they were unknown to us. And so it was really fascinating to see all of these people kind of come out of the woodwork and say, yes, I want to be able to help, whether it was $5 or whether it was $50,000. We put them all together, and we're able to impact. Now, going forward, we will not be all about disaster, right? We will be about recovery. We will be about how to partnership with with the grantees, and also how to partner with other philanthropic organizations, right? So so whether it's the city, whether it's other private family foundations, whether it's corporate contributions, there's a lot of room in this county for philanthropic collaboration as well. And you mentioned the Pacific Coast Business Times. We have a kind of an informal group of CEOs of community foundations, along the Central Coast, who now are working together as well. And I think that's all good, because the needs don't stop at the borders, right? When we get to the county line, there's still needs, and people don't define themselves by the limits of the county. And so I think it's our job as philanthropic organizations to work together to be able to reach those needs and share information with one another, which we do all the time.
Well, you're right. You and your team have definitely stepped up in this crisis. To hear that you double the amount of processing, I'm sure not easy and a lot of work, and really have helped some of these folks push through. And you talked about recovery. Are there changes in that you've made or experienced that you think are just what's going to become permanent? You're going to adopt some of those things in some of those adjustments?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And as we wind down the disaster support and look forward to recovery, it's something that we're really going to be talking to our nonprofits about over the next few months. Is what do they really need? What really can help? And one of the good things, another good thing, bright spot about COVID is we're doing a lot of this kind of Zoom conversations, right? And so you can have an expert in a particular field who is in Nebraska, and they are joining you for a learning moment on Zoom. So we now can look beyond the borders of the county, beyond the bubble of San Luis Obispo, to bring in resources to kind of raise all boats here. So we're going to be looking at how can we really serve our nonprofit community, because they're the ones who are on the ground every day doing the important work. And so our job is to really help them and to match them with donors who really are interested in their particular issues. And I think the collaboration between the organizations going forward, I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that from the nonprofit community, and to be able to see how can we support them in that endeavor as well, because that shift in terms of philanthropic support is going to be really important and to put us in a good stead for this next 5-10 years. I think we're really learning some important lessons that we're going to be able to really benefit from in the years to come.
It's really amazing work. And I agree with you. I think it'll be really interesting to see how all of that comes together and really helps our community move forward. We're getting to the end of our time here, and we always like to find out, we've heard some great information about what the community foundation. If folks want to find out more, should they jump over to the website there and figure out how to get connected to some of these?
Absolutely. The website is the best place to check us out. And we also have a newsletter. People can sign up for the newsletter as well. And there's a way to do that on the website. And although we're not actually in our lovely building right now, we're all working remotely. We still live by snail mail and that kind of thing as well. So give us a call, send us a line, jump on Facebook or the website. Be great. And we're going to be moving into LinkedIn. We're moving into the next generation of social media. So look for us on LinkedIn too.
Congratulations. That's awesome. And we will actually drop it in the Facebook chat below here. We'll put the link in. So if any of you want to click on, get to know more, or participate in some of these fabulous opportunities, that'd be great. So Heidi, before we go, would love to know, what are you looking forward to this weekend?
Well, I'm going to get outside. It's going to be fabulous, right? So do some gardening, do some hiking. So be outside in this wonderful weather. That's and get out of my office in my house.
Yeah, this is an incredible time right now. Looking, I had to look outside just to, again, take it in. So that sounds fun. Well, Heidi, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today and talk about all the great work that's happening with the Community Foundation. And it's so wonderful of you to spend time with us. So we thank you.
Oh, sure. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much. I love this series that the Chamber does. So anything we can do to support you all, we're happy to do so.
It's a great collaboration that you're going to see between more from the Community Foundation and the Chamber. We're looking forward to it. For all of you who joined us, thank you all for eating lunch with us. Join us next week for our 50th episode. We've officially been having our working lunch conversations for over a year at this point, and we'll have a great conversation next week that you'll want to join us. Thanks for watching and tuning in. We really appreciate all the support you've given the program. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. Stay healthy and safe out there.